to 360 Pulse Immersive Experiences and Innovation. I am your host, Jennifer Sertle. 360-degree imaging is part of everyday life. Circle Optics technology is being designed to accelerate the delivery of life-saving resources, ensure aerospace safety, and increase immersive experience participation. Our podcast, 360 Pulse, is dedicated to featuring immersive technology and the innovators that are working on these capabilities. Today's guest is Marc Viggiano. He is the CEO and founder of Niteopark. He's also a board member of Nuair and an advisor to the Genius New York program in Syracuse. With over 35 years of experience, Marc has helped develop advanced sensor and communication systems across various domains, holding multiple patents. In 2014, he retired from Saab's traffic management business, serving over 200 airports and seaports globally. Before that, Marc was the CEO of Saab Sensis, handling global ATM and U.S. defense radar businesses. He has spent 25 years at Sensis, growing it from a 7-person startup to a 700-employee company, and led the sale of Sensis to Saab, achieving, let me tell you this, 40x return for his investors. So not only does he understand the sensor technology, but he also knows how to build an idea, get traction on that idea, and build a company. And as you know, in Circle Optics, we're doing exactly that. We're working on a product, and we hope to continue to build our team and really hope to be a really great next business and camera company here in Rochester, New York. So, Marc, thank you for joining us today.
Oh, my pleasure.
I'm actually going to start at the fundamental level simply because I've been lucky enough to hear you speak a couple of times with the Genius New York program and other places that you speak. Leadership's really important and foundational for you. So I would really love you to share your leadership philosophy and how it had evolved over your extensive career.
Well, it definitely evolved. I was not much of a leader, and to this day, I'm not much of a leader, but I do believe that I got better at it over time. And that's, sort of my fundamental belief is you absolutely can get better at being a leader. It's hard work, but you can get better. A lot of people say great leaders are born, they're not made. And I don't really believe that's true. I think you can be made. And if you look at the track record of the U.S. Armed Forces, for example, they consistently turn out some fabulous leaders, some really talented leaders. So I think you can get better at it. Certain aspects of it. The skills side of it. A good leader has got a set of skills and they have a set of values. The values part, maybe that does probably get set in pretty early. When I say skills, I mean things like communication, listening, negotiation. Those are things that you can learn and get better at. Some of the values that make for a good leader, whether it's honesty, integrity, courage, humility, those are things that probably get set pretty early in life, and they're a little bit harder to change. Maybe 1 out of 10 people can make a significant improvement in their value set. But I think almost everybody can get better at the skill part of leadership. And I think that you have to, my philosophy is you got to work at it. And there's a lot of different ways that you can educate yourself, including formal education and reading books and studying good leaders. There's lots of ways to get better at it. Practice is one of them.
Is there a particular book by any chance that you think is a really good recommendation for some of the founders that are out and are listening right now?
Yeah, my favorite book there is actually one called Heroic Leadership. The author is Chris Lowney. And yeah, I really like that book. I like the philosophy that it has. This fellow was a New York hedge fund manager, and he left and became a Jesuit priest. And then I think he went back to Wall Street. But he got some really interesting insights from the Jesuits, who were really actually a pretty entrepreneurial group if you look at them. So that's one that I really can recommend to just about everyone. couple of the other books I like are Stumbling on Happiness. I think that's by Dan Gilbert. And Thinking Fast and Slow by Daniel Kahneman. And that falls under those last two fall under the category of self-awareness, to the cognitive biases that we all have. It's a common human failing. We just aren't naturally good at critical thinking, which is, I think, a key skill for any leader. Sort of assessing the situation you're in, taking stock, and developing a plan of action that's somewhat based in reality and the facts. Because critical thinking is crucial for everybody today in this, so-called post-truth age, where disinformation is everywhere. So everyone needs to be a better critical thinker, but leaders in particular.
That's really great. And one of my favorite other podcasts besides 360 Pulse is NPR's Hidden Brain. And he had Daniel Kahneman on quite a few times. And after his passing, because he just really, Daniel Kahneman just passed actually 2 months ago, the host of Hidden Brain actually curated all of the talks into 1 hour and a half, and it's really beautiful. Another thing that was interesting is that just before you came in here, our producer Scott Fitzgerald and I were just talking about the ability to acknowledge that you're not where you want to be. And I love that you actually started the leadership conversation with an admission that you didn't feel that you were a strong leader. And that desire to be better is so fundamental. So thank you for starting us out with such strong recommendations that apply to every single person that's listening now. Again, some of designing and scaling a business is about physics. You do similar things in a similar fashion, you'll get similar results. But I really have never heard of a company that was seven people that grew, to 700 people. And creating a 40x exit. So please share with us some key strategies and decisions that allowed your leadership at Sensis to have such remarkable growth.
Well, they say it's better to be lucky than good, and I would be disingenuous if I didn't acknowledge that we had some luck. We had some luck going for us. But we also made some good choices. Our CEO was a fellow by the name of Judd Gostin. And he was, all of us came from GE, and we had a very similar training and background. We went through a 3-year program at GE called the Advanced Course in Engineering, which was pretty rigorous and gave us we had a common philosophy. We sort of saw the world the same way. So that was a good foundation. But Judd was really meticulous about building the team. He definitely was in it for the long haul. It wasn't a business that he wanted to start and flip. So he went into it from day one with the idea that we would one day be a publicly traded company, which we fell short of. And many of us are still sad about that to this day. But we found a good home for the company with Saab. But having that long view, he was really careful about the team that he built. Especially when you're an early stage company, a bad hire can be poison for a company, any company. But when you're an early stage company, a bad hire can be a disaster. So you have to be willing to cut bait early if it turns out not to work out, because we all make mistakes in hiring. It's a hard thing to hire well. But he was very careful about the team he built. And very early on, he built a really strong independent board of directors. So everyone on our board of directors, except for Judd, was an independent director. And he really overachieved on the board, and they helped us in innumerable ways. And I was really shocked at the quality of people we were able to get on our board in exchange for relatively modest stock options. So that made a big difference. And I think the way we organized, this was many years ago. I think it's much more common today, but we were a very flat organization, not a lot of tiers. It was very different from the GE that we came from. And that helped. And we communicated well. And then we adapted to the change in size. And that's something I can't stress enough, is just how different your leadership looks when you change from, when you start out, we could all meet around one conference table in the morning, talk about what we were working on, what we needed, what our challenges were, get some help. That works fine when you're unit or platoon size, but when you grow past that, you grow past the number of people that'll fit around a conference room table, you have to change the way that you lead and the way that you organize yourself. And I think recognizing that helped us as we grew. And being willing to pivot was crucial for us. When we started the company, there was a pretty strong demand for aerospace and defense skills that we had. But then the Berlin Wall fell, and the stock market crashed, and defense spending, decreased by 50% over a few years. So our original business plan was really no longer operative. And we had to be willing to pivot, and we pivoted to civilian air traffic control. We didn't give up on the defense business, but we went in another direction as our sort of main focus. That business ultimately became 3 or 4 times the size of our defense business. But if we tried to stick to it and slog through that downturn in aerospace and defense, we would have been belly up. So being willing to pivot, build a strong team, find the best advice that you can on your board of directors. And that's something I really see a lot of early stage companies that I work with don't pay a lot of attention to. They want to control the board. They want them to all be insiders. I think that's a mistake. I think getting independent directors can provide you a lot, not just contacts in the industry, but decades of experience and a non-insider's view of what's going on.
Thank you for all of these things. I'm probably for our audience that many are innovators and have companies that are maybe 12 to 20. How many people was it? Like, was it 50 employees? Like, what number do you remember where you're like, we got to figure out a new way to lead? What number, do you remember when that was?
40 to 50 was, I'd say, about a change in kind. And then when you get to the point where you no longer know everybody's name, which depending on how good a memory you have might be around 100 or 150.
Wow. Okay.
I know there's been research on, just how many people you can have a one-on-one relationship with. But somewhere around 100, things change again. And then when you get to, say, 500, things change again. And you really puts a premium on how you communicate.
Wow. Layers and layers of foundational work. Well, growing a company is very different than actually growing innovation. And you have had multiple patents in advanced technologies. How do you, by design, foster a culture of innovation? And what advice do you give to leaders that are looking to drive innovation within their organizations?
Yeah, innovation, I guess we got to define what we mean by innovation. For me, getting a bunch of patents is not innovation for me. I mean, that in a business context, for me, innovation is not just a new idea, but the successful exploitation of a new idea. So it's a new idea that you actually, turn into a money-making proposition. So you have to know, first of all, you have to be willing to allow some experimentation and failure. So you have to have a culture that will tolerate a certain amount of experimentation. And along with that, anyone who does experiments know they don't always pan out. So you have to be willing to tolerate that. And the other thing about innovation is it's not always from a business perspective, it's not always the big killer idea for a brand new to the world, first in class product. That's one kind of innovation. I'll call that revolutionary or transformative innovation. But there's other kinds. There's everyday innovation, which a lot of people call continuous improvement, which takes a process or a product you already have and just does it a little bit cheaper, a little bit faster, a little bit better. And that's where profit lives. Profit lives there. It takes a long time to take a transformative product or idea and bring it to market. A lot of time and a lot of money and a lot of sweat. And as we know, first movers don't always, they're not always the one to benefit from that innovation. So there's the transformative innovation, and by all means, we all would like to have those, but they're a rarer set of ideas. And then there's evolutionary, where you have an existing product or service, and you just kind of expand its capabilities in one direction. I think all those types of innovation are important, and everyone in the company can contribute at one level to another. I think the other thing is to keep in mind that innovation, how do I want to say it? It's not just in the technical realm that you can innovate. You can also innovate in how you build something, or how you bring it to market, or what application domains you sell it into. So there's a lot of different domains to innovate in, not just the technical new product world, but also in how you build it and how you sell it. And those can be just as important to a company's bottom line as regular innovation. But how do you foster it? I think, like anything in a company, you have to be willing to communicate what you're looking for. And then you have to measure it and celebrate it and reward it. And that's something that a lot of companies, I think, forget about. So you can tell where your new ideas are coming from. You can measure that and feed the hungry bee. And you can also celebrate and reward it. There's nothing like it doesn't take a lot to motivate an engineer to work a little harder, a little bit longer, to come up with a new idea. But it does take something. It doesn't hurt to have a reward system kind of built in. And sometimes the reward is, we used to call them shark's teeth, which was, nowadays it was kind of like wampum. They had no extrinsic value, but the value was really in the recognition that, this young lady worked a little bit harder and a little bit longer and came up with a good idea and stuck with it. And we're going to celebrate her for that. And that can be worth a lot. And, for me personally, I think I'm at my most creative when I'm out of the office, when I'm out of the routine. I probably get my best thoughts when I'm on a plane somewhere with the noise canceling headphones on. I think it helps to be able to tap into new sources of knowledge. I mean, there's a lot of smart people in the world, and 99.99% of them are not inside your company. They're somewhere else. Avail yourself of that knowledge, whether it's through a university or a library or a conference. That can stimulate new thinking. For me, I read a lot of science fiction, and I find that sort of helps shift my brain into a slightly different frame, a slightly different way of looking at things. Or listening to music, or doing something that you love can free you from that sort of day-to-day grind. Everyone's different, but for me, I have to shift my frame of reference a little bit from the day-to-day work to come up with better ideas or new ideas. And of course, I get a new idea, at least one new idea every day. And the vast majority of them are just bad ideas. And I think it's important to, the old idea of a suggestion box, doesn't put enough onus on the people coming up with a suggestion to kind of chase it down. A new idea has to really come from a broad and deep understanding of your customers and what the market pull is, what do they really need, and what does the competitive landscape look like. And that's really where, 99% of my new ideas fall down. Someone's already done it. It's not really addressing a significant market need. There's not significant pull. Don't waste your time elaborating things that you can easily, a first-year MBA student could easily weed out.
I can hear some of that GE due diligence as you explain that, but I love the point that I really hope our listeners take with it is that innovation doesn't lie just in technology and just technology companies. Innovation is everywhere, and being able to honor the fact that however you see the landscape and run into friction, there's something that you could think of to remove that friction, and that habit might be really good just to make your brain just curious and open. But once you have an idea, if you want to share it, if you really want traction, you're going to have to invest in actually creating where you got the idea and the relevance of the idea, and give it more than just here's an idea. I love that it's got to live in a little bit of discipline as well. I want to talk a little bit about the future of technology. Of course, your experience in radar, air traffic control, and communication systems. I'm wondering, from your landscape and where you sit, what are some of the emerging technologies that you believe will have the most significant impact on this environment the next decade?
Well, there's a bunch. One of the big changes, that I've seen over the past decade or so, and it's accelerating, is in phased array technology. So electronically scanned antennas for communication and surveillance, both. And the idea of phased arrays has been around for 50 years. So I was working on them, 40, 50 years ago. It's not a new concept, but to build one was just so difficult. They were large, extremely costly, hundreds of millions of dollars. Today, with various semiconductor process technologies, whether it's silicon germanium or gallium nitride or silicon carbide, gallium arsenide, you can put an entire element on a small chip. And the prices have come down to the point where phased arrays are Starlink, the Starlink antenna for Musk Starlink service is a phased array antenna. But, one that would have cost hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars just a few years ago, you now can buy for $500, and it can bring you a game-changing service like Starlink. So the reduction in cost and availability of phased arrays, and then, for example, in the drone world, that will make possible detect and avoid at a price point and a weight that can live on a small UAS. So I think that's a significant technology that we'll see more and more of in our world. In air traffic control, integrating everything on a satellite, I think, makes a huge change. So today, if you look at air traffic control, it relies on an extensive ground network of navigation aids and radars and air traffic control towers, and all of that can be done from a satellite globally in a very convenient way. So if you combine surveillance, like cooperative surveillance, like ADS-B, or in the drone world, as we call it, remote ID, where the plane is actually using sat-nav, GPS to figure out where it is and then tell you and everyone else around where it is. And then you combine that with voice communication. When all those things are on satellite, you can deploy it anywhere in the world at a fraction of the cost without building out all this infrastructure. So integrating communication, navigation, and surveillance, or CNS, onto satellites, I think is just around the corner. I think that will make a big change. And then AI is a huge change. And so today I'm fairly convinced that we could handle all civilian air traffic control would better be done by a computer than by the network of people we have today. It's done in a very suboptimal way. A typical human can control in high altitude airspace, they can handle between 5 and 7 aircraft. That's it. So that limits the density in a certain sector to a very large sector to 5 aircraft. That's not going to cut it for drones. It clearly has to be automated. But I think so when we look at the number of drones that will be flying, the number of advanced air mobility, sort of regional air transport, as that gets overtaken by electric aircraft, we need to go there, and I think we easily can. I think AI will make that significantly safer and significantly higher density and more efficient.
It's exciting.
So those are a few trends that I see.
I'm so excited that living in in Rochester and Syracuse and having access to Genius and New Air and the Syracuse airport, I think it's really it's an exciting experiment where we can actually see these new technologies develop. And it's neat to have you here. I have time for just one last question. And I'm wondering, mentorship's important to you, and I see you as a mentor for Upstate Venture Connect, and you're a mentor for Genius New York. What is the most common mistake that you catch that people are willing to hear and do something about?
Well, the do something about part is you threw in a curveball there. A lot of entrepreneurs are what I call single combat warriors. They're doing everything themselves. They're coming up with a product, they're designing it, they're marketing it, they're doing all the hiring. My favorite old African proverb is, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. And I just don't see enough early stage entrepreneurs who have the self-awareness to recognize when they are beyond their limits, when they're beyond their strengths, and to either take themselves out of the CEO position and maybe become a CTO, or recognizing when you're beyond your capabilities and when it would be best, when it's time to delegate or reshuffle the deck, I think is a very common failure mechanism. Or just interpersonal, when two co-founders have interpersonal issues, to recognize that one of them maybe needs to step back. Those are hard human issues, and it's a mistake that gets repeated over and over. And also entrepreneurs taking care of themselves. It's a lot of hard work, and there is no shortcut to building a business. But you can't go like that forever. And as I've shared with some of the Genius companies, Sensis doubled in size. It grew 100% compound annual growth rate year after year for 7 straight years, from 1 million in revenue to 100 million in revenue. And so, maybe you can go on 2 or 3 hours sleep every night and not pay any attention to your family, friends, or the rest of the world, and not eat right and not exercise. Maybe you can do that for a month. Maybe you can do that for a year. But if you want to grow a significant company, you can't do that for 7 straight years. Nobody can do that. So you have to recognize those limitations and take a little time and care for yourself. I think that's a pretty common failure mechanism as well.
Everyone talks about the grit, but the self-care and that invitation for leaders to really take care of themselves, I think is really, really wonderful. You've been listening to Scale Innovation and Self-Awareness with Marc Viggiano, the CEO and founder of Niteopark, board member of New Air, and advisor to Genius New York. I want to thank all of you for joining us. We'd also like to thank the Institute of Optics, Genius New York, the Luminate Accelerator, AFWorks, Cider Technologies, and Archangel Imaging. We also want special mention to our producer, Scott Fitzgerald at RockVox Studios here in Rochester, New York, the epicenter of optics expertise. And I really hope that you'll connect with us. Subscribe to our program. Find us on Twitter, also called X, and LinkedIn. We're very interested in how immersive technology positively impacts safety and human connection. And if you know a story we should feature or a guest that can further this conversation, please let me know. You can reach me at Jennifer@circleoptics.com. Thank you for joining us.